Hey guys, Pete here, and I'm joined with Jim and Aaron from Bald Move, and we're going to talk about Foundation Season 2 generally, but we're also going to talk specifically about the finale that just aired yesterday, and we're going to talk about Season 3.
It's been confirmed. The lifeboats have been disabled. No one survived.
Sorry
about that.
Yeah, and we're gonna listen to a little bit of that video there. But yeah, so we're in this weird time thing where we did a wrap up for their podcast. I did a finale interview with David Goyer. They're doing one of those. There's a lot of different things that are coming out at different times. So we had already recorded. We'd already done this once for the Bald Move podcast, and I just wanted to start out by seeing how these guys feel now, a few days later, how they feel about the finale now that they've had a couple of days to think about it. So Aaron, you want to start?
Yeah, I was I mentioned my first feelings was like, kind of shock. I felt like I was tricked. I felt and I kind of stumbled in this analogy as we were talking. It's one of those things where it's like I felt to me like a good buddy of mine had committed a good practical joke on me. Like, you know, he comes inside like, dude, someone stole your car, and I go outside and it's missing. And I'm like, oh my God, how am I going to get to work? How am I going to take my kid to school? I got to call my insurance agent. I got to call the police. And I'm just like all twisted up. What the hell is going to happen? What are the implications of this? And then after he lets me twist up for a while, he comes over and is like, bro, I was just joking. And you feel that kind of flood of relief, and you might feel some frustration and some anger, and it all comes down to like, how good was the joke and how long did they leave you twisted up? I feel like that's how I felt about this finale, that like after I thought about it and I thought through all the implications and I thought about, all the things we'd seen, that it's like, yeah, you got me. And it was fair and square, with one exception that I was a little, couldn't quite explain. And I think after we talked to Goyer yesterday, I think we got an explanation for that. So I'm, especially since I started thinking out, the thing that really upset me is I was super excited about how the hell is he going to destroy the first Foundation and then play out the rest of the Foundation series. It's like, how is this possibly going to work? But then I realized that, as they explained in the season, the whole point of the second Foundation was to be the moderating of the first Foundation, and the first Foundation wouldn't know. And then they blew that up at the midpoint in the season when Dr. Seldon found out about him being the left hand. And it feels to me like they flipped that now. The first Foundation is submarined. Everyone in the galaxy, including Harry and Gaal, when they find out, will think that the Foundation is gone. So now they are the unseen hidden hand. Dr. Seldon has wrested control of the plan from Harry. And I think that's fascinating. It sets up the idea the same way they had in the dialogue with Gaal, that like there might be a Harry Dr. Seldon confrontation. And I think that's super exciting. So while I was a little disappointed in the finale at the beginning, because I thought it was cheap and let us off the hook, I started thinking about all the deaths, all the implications, and all the evidence that they had put in front of us of what they were doing. And I think I'm like 8 out of 10 satisfied on that.
Yeah, well, I think I can relate to all of what you're saying as far as how you got there. What about you, Jim? You were a little bit more down on it, I think.
Well, I had just watched it. When we did that podcast, I was 2 hours post watching that finale. So that prank was still in full effect, right? Like I was sitting there going, "Oh man, I've been made to look a fool." I feel like to go on with the prank analogy here, there's a point where you go too far, right? Like, let's say your buddy says, man, it's just up the street, I fooled you. And then you get there and it's missing the seats. And you're like, wait a second. I thought the prank was my car's missing. The prank is now actually twofold. Mm-hmm. And then, you drive it down the street and, it has no gas in it, right? And you're not close enough to get to a gas station. Prank number 3. That could maybe get to be a bit too much, right?
Yeah.
And that's kind of how I felt about this finale, though I have moderated a lot on that as I've thought more about it, because a lot of this stuff is set up, and it's set up really cleverly. And in some places they withhold information to make the surprise bigger, and I think that's okay. It's not my preferred way, I guess, of engaging with the story, but it did surprise me. It did have that effect.
Yeah.
There's only one area where it still sticks with me, that maybe I was fooled unfairly, and it's around the Harry Gale stuff. And we could talk more about that. I think that's what Aaron was alluding to when he was saying there were some circumstances that Goyer talked about in our interview that I think is out now on our website.
New shit has come to light.
Yeah.
He specifically addressed that one, and I was like, okay, well, I'm not crazy. There was something up here that doesn't quite make sense. And
Okay.
so I'm a little stuck on that point, but everything else I think I'm pretty much come around to.
Well, that's good. That's good to hear. I was since we saw it early and had time to think about it. I was curious to see, and it seems to me that the response has been, way positive. You know what I mean? Like not.
Yeah.
There's less defectors, less people complaining about than what I thought might have been the case, but that's good. I mean, like I said, I guess the big question, the thing that I come back to when I think about it is what I was telling you, right before we came on here, is that I definitely don't like fake outs. Like fake outs are one of the things that can get me like to completely lose interest in a show. It's happened several times over the years, and a lot of that, it doesn't happen the next episode. You know what I mean? It's something that it just wears my interest away over time. So I'll agree with what you're saying there, Jim, is I hope that, if this is the time that they wanted to do that, and it does fit thematically. And I do really like the idea of what Dr. Seldon pulled off here. You know what I mean? Like that, there's a lot of interesting implications of the way that this plan played out. I didn't like the way that it was, it was presented, and it undermined some of that emotional stuff that happened in 9, because I really like 9. Like that's another part that's important, I think, to say here, is that I was blown away by the 9th episode, and I was really, I had really high expectations. So all of that stuff factors into where where I sit with it, but still, like there was a ton of stuff that really, like the Demerzel stuff was like a sort of part 1 and part 2 in 9 and 10. And I think that would probably carried it either way, for me, because I really enjoyed that stuff. And I just like, hopefully this isn't like the way that the show will become, because then it'll be, I feel like it'll change it a little bit. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I was listening to your interview with Goyer that you did after 209, and it felt like maybe he was interested in telling the story this way, though I don't know to what extent, right? Because I'm tolerant of quite a bit of surprises, as long as they're foreshadowed well enough, as long as it feels fair. And I think most of this stuff does feel fair in retrospect. So I'm not super worried if this is the way he wants to tell the story. Look, I think season 2 is markedly better than season 1, even after this finale, and I'm excited for season 3. So, it didn't damage my relationship with the show.
And I see some people in the chat saying that it might be hard to reinvest in plot lines after he had the rug pulled out. I'm going to go ahead and reinvest, and just with the knowledge that if this happens again, then yes, that's probably going to be the fatal detriment of the show. Like, and I'm not saying they can't be twisty, but they can't be this twisty with this many twists with this much withheld information, because I think they did about 1.5 of the 3 twists well. One was, like I said, kind of an unforced error on their part that we can talk about. Maybe we should talk about next. So guys feel like we're just teasing that. And then the other,
our interview, right?
And then the other one is like, it works, but they just played us false. Like the one that they just absolutely played us false was the Spacers revolt. There was no possible way we could have known. Well, it's not that there's no possible way, because like everyone saw that there's something up with the home swarm returning, and for her to, go.
Yeah, there was something that was off, but there was no real. You couldn't build anything from that. Like
yeah, and like. Yeah, and I asked Goyer in our interview, it's like my problem with this is like, we saw the pitch and then we broke away and we saw her reaction to the pitch was essentially, it's tempting, but I'm calling the cops. And I said, are we supposed to understand that was like a worked shoot? Was this something that they put on a ruse for our benefit? When I'm like, that doesn't make sense because we're the viewers. There's no one else watching. Or I said, are you supposed to understand that Hobart jumped in and says, but wait, there's more. And then he goes, well, the latter. And I'm like, man, there was really nothing other than, again, the whole home swarm coming to them and them communing, which is something. But I know, I just feel like that's what I'm saying is a 1.5, 1.75 out of 3 twists pulled off, because I just felt like that you got to deduct at least a quarter point for deliberately telling something like, we are not taking your deal and I'm calling the cops and I'm turning you in. And then that having the kind of the last way we ended. I'd almost rather not have come back to that scene and just have she Ben's light go stiff and then be like, hey, the home swarming's come to visit us. And then we surmise what happened, because that was just that's telling us to go left and they went right. And I don't think the show, as Demerzel said, that was cruel and beneath them. If they do it again, then it's it'll
add up. It will add up if you keep doing it.
And talking to Goyer, he knows that. I think he's
that's important, because a lot of times whenever you think about these kinds of mechanics, you think about them in a vacuum, but it is it does make a big difference if the person who's doing that, and that's sort of what I said, I think, when we talked before, was that you can do it once. And if he's aware of that and he's taking that into consideration whenever he's planning things out, then I feel okay with it. I feel, okay, that was, because it is a surprise. And like you said, it generally has all the stuff you need to make it work, to fit together. The pieces are there. You can puzzle it together. But, like I said, it just sort of, I watched it. I felt like, that I wanted to just a little bit less of the big twists, what I mean? Just tone it down a little bit. But like, we're kind of starting off in a negative direction, when I think generally we all agree that season 2 was a lot of fun and a lot of an improvement over the first one.
Absolutely.
So why don't we go just in that direction a little bit with the overall thoughts on this season? Maybe you can start, Jim.
Overall thoughts, I think they did a lot better job with every aspect of this show. I mean, it still looked amazing, which is one of the things I loved about season 1. But they've added a depth to all these characters, and for me personally, I've been way more interested in all of the characters this season across the board. Before, it was pretty much only the Cleonic dynasty stuff that was firing on all cylinders. This season, I really got invested in the Salvor Harry Gaal relationship. All of that stuff worked so much better than season 1. And they kept all the Empire stuff just as good. So frankly, I don't have a lot of complaints in the season overall. It's really just how the thing ended, right? Because the rest of it is kind of awesome.
Yeah. What about you, Aaron?
Yeah, I think this is a confident step forward for the show. And as you said, like, I was kind of surprised. I thought I had a sample size of 3 people, and all 3 of us had reservations about how Trixia was. I was expecting to see that kind of, a heavy undercurrent of that in a lot of the fan spaces, and everyone seems to like it. So I think this is an improvement. As Jim said, there was a couple. I wasn't so much on this the first season, but the Empire was clearly the best storyline. I think that all the storylines were almost equally as impressive or engaging. All of the new characters felt like they all were engaging and charismatic, and I understood what they were doing, and I thought they had good chemistry with their cast. And I think we're well positioned to go forward in the series. I actually think that Salvor Hardin's death was necessary because it sells. Honestly, the amount of death that did happen, I think, if Salvor hadn't died, or like Bell and Hober had been castled off of that ship, we would be having we would have a very different conversation about how cheap this finale felt. And I also think it's a case of addition through subtraction. I don't share a lot of fan complaints in season 1 that Lee Harvey wasn't good. I thought she was a pretty good. They were a pretty good Salvor Hardin. But the thing I worried about, even as I saw the chemistry between her and Gaal improve and her and Harry improve, is that what are they going to do with Salvor? She's just like a crappier version.
Yeah,
of Gaal.
she was a third wheel for sure.
Her powers were like a reversed version of Gale's, but they never in the coin. I was wondering, it's like going forward, it's like, why am I interested in these characters other than their mother-daughter dynamic? So by killing Salvor, they, number one, gave a gut punch to the audience, because I thought the material with her and Harry mourning her was very strong, especially when you saw, how well she was fitting in with the Mentalics and how the children were accepting her. And for the first time, she felt like she belonged somewhere. But I think going forward, that's a smart play too. So I thought this was a great season. I feel bad for, I guess, Bald Move in particular, because I feel like we were overrepresented in the crowd of people who were kind of disappointed in the finale. But I still think this show is great. It's some of the best sci-fi science fiction on TV today. I would like to see it succeed, and I hope they get a chance to keep coming back with season 3.
Yeah, the one thing about the season as a whole was that when you look at the finale, I was talking to him about this one in the interview that's going to come out, so I don't want to get into it too much. But like when you're in that, when they were on the Destiny, and and you see Brother Day, he starts to lose it, and you look around the room and you think about how many pieces had to be put into place. Like there's so much stuff, like everybody's there, you know what I mean? And like that kind of gives you a good idea of the kind of, how the ambition that they had in this season, with so many different things going so many different directions. And then you could get all of those people on that ship with motivations that you understand for all of them. Like you kind of know where they're all at and how they feel about what's happening. That's pretty impressive, right? I mean, there's a lot. It's one of those things that doesn't. It's not really that in your face, you know what I mean? But if you really think about it, how many plot lines and different things and things that they pulled together. I mean, they made I think one thing you see in this, and it was in season 1 too, but I think they just got a lot better about it. They were pretty seriously trying to plant those seeds and have those threads that they could pull on later, that you would see and that you'd pick back up on. I mean, there's a ton of them in the finale itself. You had the lock rewind and, all these things that, the castling device, obviously, like, it's going to come into play somewhere. So you're just waiting for it. And most of that stuff, all those payoffs they felt good. You know what I mean? Like you were like, all right, finally, now we know what that is. Now we know who hired the assassins and why they did it, and it makes sense and all that. So I think that's the part of the finale that worked and the best, and that's kind of the reflection of why the season is so much better. And for my taste, is just because everything, there was a lot of different things going on. They managed it pretty well, and they were able to wrap it all up in that, without putting anything, like they didn't really like let anything go. I have a lot of questions.
Force anything, right?
Yeah.
Everything felt like everyone had their motivations, and this is how it would come together at the end.
Yeah.
Even though it's very intricately plotted.
Yeah.
The other thing I love about this show, kind of all those moving pieces that you're talking about, is the comedy that they're able to bring in. I mean, look, that toast to Becky's asshole at the end of Bell and Hober's run is just sublime, in my opinion. I love a good crass but adult joke, because the joke is not that he says asshole, right? The joke is they're dying and they're toasting to this absurd thing. It's the way they're able to weave comedy into this otherwise very heady show, I think, is akin to like a Breaking Bad, the way it did it.
And they did it a lot better than last season, because last season was much drier.
Yeah.
And the humor a little bit more forced.
Yeah, and what you brought up that scene, and that was one of my favorite scenes to go back and rewatch when I was writing the script for my video, because there's so much going on there, and those two actors, they really navigate it. And I think you're right, because you have that joke. It is crass. It's that's sort of the point, right? Is that it's wrong, and that makes them feel better. But like what I really like about the scene is that you watch Bell, he's watching Hober. They both know they're going to die. They're both terrified, but Bell sees that in Hober, so he wants to do something to kind of ease his stress in that moment. You know what I mean? Like he wants to address that, and and that's the character that we know him to be from watching him with Glawen and watching him, follow the orders so that he can maybe do something better for the people who are all getting crushed under the Empire anyways, right?
And he's kind of reckoned with his own death already, right?
Yeah.
Bell. Whereas I guess Hober kind of knew he was going to die going into this, but you can see on his face, he hadn't really thought about it very much. He was just like,
that's sort of his character too, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And so Bell is kind of holding his hand through their demise because he's had this opportunity to think about it when he was essentially doing forced labor in a death camp.
Yeah. You got to get that obelisk for the spacers so they can go to work. They can't go to work without it. I have one super chat here I wanted to read really quickly. It's not a question, but it's from Steve Owen. Thank you for the 5. And he just wants to tell us that he expected the first foundation to survive exactly the way it did. I don't know where, I was watching the subreddit because I had to watch these two. I had to watch 9 and 10 back to back because I had to interview Goyer back to back. So it was, I was watching on the week to see if anybody would get to this place exactly, and there were a few people who did. They did it. I was listening to your podcast though. It was the first time I heard someone say, "Well, there's no way that the vault is going to get destroyed," and that does actually kind of make sense, right? You got this thing that, even if everybody else dies, Harry's probably going to last, right? So there is a way that you can get to that conclusion. It's just the end of episode 9. It just really looked like everybody was dying. So it
looked like a bigger sacrifice than was actually being made there, right?
And the sacrifice makes sense too. You know what I mean? Like those would have been we're watching the religious season, right? So they would have been the martyrs, and then you would have had Messianic Harry survive, that again, rise from the ashes of the thing. I mean, there was a lot of different ways that they could go with that if that's what they decided to do. As far as like some other things, what about, I think, when we talked the last time, I said that I really liked that scene with Demerzel where she's having that conversation with what's the Galactic Council, which I didn't realize that's something I want to come back to later. But in the moment, I was thinking that's who it was, but there's other evidence now that is caught my attention that those people might be a little bit more important than I realized. But watching her, this is someone that's always composed, someone who's always together. It really does highlight just how I mean, Empire is pretty screwed at the end of the season, right?
It's like we talked about this a little bit on our podcast. Like, if you're familiar with any kind of science fiction series where they have a galactic spanning civilization and then for some reason hyperspace travel becomes impossible, it'd be just like an alien came and just removed all of our railways, highways, evaporated our oceans, and made made internal combustion impossible all in one sweep. It's like, would that kill all of humanity? Probably not, but a lot of us gonna die. We are completely reliant on schlepping food, materials, supplies all around the globe to make the stuff work. So I think the Empire is, like they are going to be in for some massive upheaval.
I mean, they can buy whisper ships. You have to imagine
from Foundation.
you'd have to imagine that that's part of the plan of the Foundation, right? Is that they got a monopoly on.
Do you think the Foundation wants to turn the Empire into a client state, or do you think they just want to have them wither and die? Or maybe I guess. Okay, go ahead.
Well, I was just going to say that it might not happen directly, but if they are producing whisper ship, I mean, that would be that's my understanding of their plan, right? Is that they're going to the spacers were key because that gives them this real advantage. I mean, they have a technological advantage going in, but this gives them a real advantage that only Empire had before. Nobody could sell jump ships. Nobody could really do any of that unless they went through Empire, because Empire had the spacers. Now that the spacers are obsolete, we have, the situation is completely flipped. And I don't know. That's an interesting question if they would just try to isolate them, but I don't know how they could do business across the galaxy and sell them elsewhere and keep the Empire from getting those in a different way. You know what I mean? Like, I don't think the plan would be to build a huge fleet of Foundation ships that are only for hire, you know what I mean? But that's another way they could approach it, I guess.
I was thinking that the Foundation, they have been slowly, cautiously expanding on the fringes of the Empire. Now that the Empire collapses, like jump ship diplomacy, just jump into a system with a jump ship full of supplies, medical equipment, and be like, hey, when's the last time an Imperial supply ship came by? Oh, it's been a month or two? Okay, well, we can let you have this right now, get you installed with your own jump drive. You don't need it. And it's just like the expansion that the amount of territory they're going to take from the Empire. Because the other thing is the Empire is not without fast. A lot of people are like, oh, they can't do faster than light. We saw from season 1 that they have a network of like hyperspace lanes and jump gates and whatnot that you can do, go from one end of the galaxy to another in like a human lifetime. But that's not nearly fast enough that they need to sustain their economy, sustain their civil. So like, I think the inner core of the Empire will probably continue to coast on, but they're just going to, the outer fringes of their body is just going to be nibbled away by the Foundation.
Yeah, and you're using a food reference there. I mean, that's one of the things too. Like, I don't know that's ever been as clear on the show as it was in the books, but I mean, the way Trantor is in the books, I mean, there's no food there. It's all brought in from feeder planets that are just for agriculture. So, there could be like actual short-term things, but that makes me think about another question I had here, was that we see the title card and we see that 152 years later. Do you think we go straight there or close to there, and then just sort of see this all in the sense of how it all changed since the last time we saw these places? Or do you think there's going to be some in-between stuff?
My general feeling is we're going to jump right there.
Yeah, it's kind of where I think too. Just because that's what they did before. Yeah.
Yeah. I think you even pointed this out on our wrap-up podcast that we've did in the past. It will be your future, everybody. Is that you mentioned that structure of the season 1 was essentially all in one broad timeline with detours to the past to tell different stories, but like, and then when we jumped ahead with Gaal and Salvor, we then rejoined them already in the stream of time. So like, yeah, I think season 3 will probably go to 152 years in the future with a significant trip several thousand years back to do a Demerzel story, probably. But yeah, that's my expectation.
What is the next Demerzel story? I know he's told that there's going to be. He wants to tell one about the spiral.
Mm-hmm.
He wants to tell one about why she looks the way that she does, why she wears this face. What's the other one? There's another
I think
one.
he said he would like to tell a Robot Wars story, but that might
Oh,
not
that's
be
right, that's
possible.
right.
Yeah, is her creation and why she left Earth, the robot war and her involvement in that, and like you said, the spiral that she walked.
Do you guys have it? This is totally random, but do you have any kind of headcanon on what's going on whenever she grabs the luminism bracelet in moments of stress? Like, is it just like
Heaven help me.
I think it's an act of faith. Yeah, she's like, she's expressing faith that this is more than she can take, and she's holding on to that for dear life.
Yeah, it's a strange choice. I mean, I think it's really effective because you have a robot that doesn't necessarily process emotions or show them very often. So, you can have that go-to thing to say, hey, I'm not really feeling this situation, or I'm not able to process and figure out what's happening here, and I need to find a solution or whatever. But I don't want to get too far off track, but I think about that luminism thing and in that story, and I can't really. I mean, I guess I have a couple of ideas, but I mean, it's weird. It's one of, like, I guess it's the idea of having a soul, right? Is that's sort of what do you guys kind of connect it to that when you think about Demerzel? That, her religious, like, I mean, a robot shouldn't really have that as part of their makeup,
You wouldn't think so.
It is an interesting question, because that was the big debate with the Empire, if they had a soul, right?
Mm-hmm.
I wonder do you think that Luminism might have been one of the leading institutions that turned against the robots, and that's why Demerzel took a personal interest in it and maybe tried to prove to them that robots could have a soul? I don't know. When did she walk the spiral? 10,000 years ago?
Yeah, it's quite a bit.
Robot Wars, I think he mentioned, was like 4,500 years ago. So that would not really line up.
I think it's 11,000. I think it's about 11,000 years she walked the spiral, and it's about 5,000 years ago the Robot Wars. So yeah, that's the weird part, is that you think that might have brought her closer to humanity, that was there for that, right? Like she felt to be a part of humans, or or more human, because we obviously see her express things that look human, especially in these last couple of episodes. But then you have this war, and the Robot War, it just doesn't really make sense. Like, for liberation, that's the thing that Brother Dust said, that they fought to have their personhood. And then you have the whole idea of her not being really a regular robot either. So I don't know. Like I said, I don't want to go too far off the path at this point. But
was it when we talked, Aaron, you remember this, when we talked with Goyer, was that when he mentioned that she was a general, but we don't necessarily know which side she fought for?
Yeah, he said that Cleon mentioned there was robots that fought humans and robots that fought other robots, and he cocked his eyebrow and said, so we really don't, it would be a little hasty to decide which side of the Robot War she's on, which could be him fucking with us.
Yeah.
50-50 chance, honestly, with the two possibilities. So
yeah, I saw a lot of people in the comments of my video saying, why did the showrunner say in your interview that everyone on Terminus died? I saw that this morning whenever I was checking in, because in my 209 interview, he said everyone left on the planet is definitely dead. Sort of as a wink and a nod.
He always leaves himself those loopholes, for sure.
Yeah, he did it with a wink and a nod, and then people ran with that as you know, to confirm their theories that this was a real thing that happened. And some people were disappointed to find out that that wasn't the case. I got another super chat here. Hiram Claytor, thank you for the 5. The castling initially confused me. Usually the camera would zoom in on Bel Rio's hand while he hits the button or something. They just sort of hand waved that whole thing, and then I guess they had him tell Hober at the end, "Yeah, I stuck the node in his robe when we were wrestling."
But honestly, as soon as it happened, I knew immediately.
Yeah.
Like, I didn't need the inset of the button push. It's just like they showed us visually what that looked like, down to the switching of clothes.
Yeah.
And yeah, I can say, yeah. I mean, there's a lot of tricks and twists in that, but I thought that one was played pretty straight.
Yeah, and I saw Jim chuckling there. Like, I just want to say what a great idea it was to have the clothes switch. I mean, that's the best thing. That's the best thing about this castling device. Like, because the castling device, you know, it's okay. It's not the most useful tech, really. You know what I mean? Like, as far as for what happens here and the way in the story they told it, it works really well. But otherwise, it's just kind of a little bit silly. But the fact that they change clothes, it gets me every single time. Some of the like I posted on the, whenever I was watching the finale and I saw Bell walking, and I saw that he has these giant pants and chainmail, and he's not a small guy. Like, he's probably 6 foot or something like that, but you know, he's got Lee Pace's clothes on, so they're a little bit big. And then I was thinking, oh yeah, well that means that the reverse is true. So I went, and it looks like as he's spinning off into the void, that he's got shorts on.
Because like I was listening to your podcast for 10 while I was doing some housework today, and when you made that assertion, I'm like, no. And I actually, because I just had my phone in my pocket, I looked out, and yeah, Dave's wearing capri pants, like,
yeah,
and
clam diggers.
And Bell looks so badass. He looks so like, and it completely changed Ben's performance too. Like the way he held himself and the way he's walking around, like wearing Bell's chain, not Bell, Dave's chainmail, and just his face covered in blood. It's just it's so fucking metal. I loved it.
Yeah.
To the point of that super chat, can I just say, yeah, you're kind of right. I mean, a lot of times you would see something that would clue you in maybe a little bit before you actually see it happen. That maybe this is going to happen, or something you can look back at after you watch it the first time and say, oh, that's when this happened, right? In this, we get it kind of in retrospect, which, feels, it feels a little trickier than I want it to be, I guess.
Yeah, I don't know. I guess it's hard to remember when I was watching the first time, because I watched it so many times since then and looked at it. But what I remembered was that he had shown him the castling device in his cell whenever they first brought them on the ship, and from that point on, I was just waiting until it was going to come into play. And I'm glad they used it where they did, because there was a lot of people talking about him giving it to Glaywin, or it being in that thing or whatever. And I don't know. I mean, I guess that would have been okay if he would have switched places with him on the planet, if that was really what was happening, if the planet was really destroyed or whatever. But I kind of like this. I kind of like the way they went with it this way better, because it's hard to imagine how you defeat Day straight up, you know what I mean? Because he is Empire. And if they really did start to win the fight, the guards would have intervened, you know what I mean? So it's like, it was a pretty good way to just kick him while he was down one more time. Cause he took a couple of shots in those last 2 episodes to the old ego, as he got tore apart by different people. You guys let's talk about overall, like, was there what was your favorite season 2 invention? Like, what was the thing that was new to season 2 that will stick with you the most? I'll go with, I'll start, I guess. I'll say that, you know, the finding out more about Cleon the First, introducing that into the situation. Like, I guess we always knew that she had this directive, but getting the idea that the prime, you know, the actual prime, the first one, was a pretty weird dude that, you know, that did this. Like, you know what I mean? Because before that, the story about Cleon the First is that he had this great reign where everything was peaceful, and you wanted to continue that. So you have this genetic dynasty, but really it just came down to, like, when he was a kid, he met a robot, and then he got the hots for her, and then he wanted to keep her his prisoner for the rest of his life. And now everybody in the entire galaxy has to deal with that.
That
kind of
sums it up.
Yeah, it kind of changes things a little bit, right?
Yeah. I think that's the big one, right? Because that's a character that's definitely going to follow us through probably the entire show, if I had to guess. But both of those characters, really, Cleon and Demerzel.
Yeah.
Favorite
Yeah, I mean, I guess
new?
it's pretty well. I mean, that's the general consensus was that the Empire storyline was, you know, more interesting, at least in the first season. And I also like that, you know, this is now shifting toward less on the actual clones, which, you know, are kind of the same all the time, and moving towards Demerzel, who is, there's just a lot more. I feel like there's a lot more that we could discover in her story. But did you guys have?
I am looking forward to see 152 more years of degradation to the clones. What that's going to do, you know?
Yeah.
If it's going to get like visually weird, is it just going to be? Because I asked Goyer, I said, did you deliberately write Day to be more vulgar? And ever since the word, and he's like, oh, definitely. We definitely wrote him to be a little bit more blowhard, a little bit more coarse, a little bit more common. And I think that, so like, I want to see another 152 years of thumbs up the Cleonic asses with what that's going to do to them.
Yeah, there could be, like you said, there could be actual genetic mutations and different things. I guess, I don't know. It's a little bit fuzzy, because you would think that that Demerzel could just sort of fix a lot of things like that. But, you know, I guess since we're talking about her and everything else, like, there was a time when I thought that Demerzel was kind of simultaneously running the Empire, but also trying to destroy it. I think that that could still be the case, but after seeing her conversation with Duskin Rue in the finale, it kind of made me think that maybe that's not possible, you know, because they're pointing those things out to her. Like, why not just let the wedding happen? Why not just let us change your programming? And she pretty much shuts all that stuff down. And so what is your sense on that? Do you think that it would be possible? Because that's her get out of jail free card, right? As the Empire ends, then she's not she doesn't have to serve it anymore. Do you think that it's possible that she can do both? Try to do what's best for it and try to destroy it at the same time.
That's a very Asimovian thing, right? Those contradictions and like different laws, and he might be screwing around with, since I know he doesn't have full rights to the robot stuff, he might try to reinterpret that in terms of like, can Demerzel through action or inaction allow the Empire to be harmed? Because I thought I mentioned this to Mr. Goyer. Maybe I was just talking to Jim, but I mentioned that, like, is there, like, you know, does Demerzel see, like, in the back of her head, in almost a subconscious level, threats to the Empire that she could choose to act on or not act on, or emphasize or de-emphasize? And say with a straight face, like letting Day go or Dawn go is I think a big threat to the Empire, but apparently it's something that she lets happen. And I just wonder if some of these things she can like find these gaps, these cracks to kind of slide through some kind of way that not through direct action, but especially with now that she's got the Prime Radiant, that she could maybe just kind of let something slide, that's not an act of treason, but it's like, it's hard for me to envision exactly how that would work. Well, anyway, I asked Mr. Goyer that, and he said that's a fair thing for you to consider, which is his, I think, standard stock answer for no comment. But
yeah, that's like what do you say whenever you've read the book Mildly Interesting or
Mildly
something
Interesting?
Yeah.
But like it's like one of those things where like they mentioned that she had 1 second that she was truly free, and she could have jumped out of there and broke Cleon's neck and done this or that and the other. She didn't. And now it's like so that direct assault is out of the question. But can she do something indirect, something that would maybe even take centuries to take effect?
Yeah, because at the end of season 1, I thought, and we already talked about this, so I won't belabor it, but like I thought that the genetic, like the way I thought about Demerzel in season 1, I was like, this is a character that is super competent. This is a higher being basically. And so whenever weird stuff happens around Empire, it's almost like she has to let it happen. Like whenever the genetic, like whenever Cleon when Cleon the first genetic material was adulterated, I just assumed that she must have something to do with that, either by just not stopping the people or doing it herself. And so whenever we saw the assassins this season, it's the same thing. But now after watching the finale, like I wonder, like would she be able to let that happen?
Well, I remember this is the context that came up because one of your chatters here said, like Jose said, she did say I picked you for a reason. I asked him because that was stuck in my mind, is like, what reason did she pick him for, and was she satisfied? And Goyer thought about it for a minute, and he said, he's the type of guy that has firm convictions and wouldn't be a pushover for Day. And I said, like, so is it in the back of her mind that if Bell did a little too good a job rebelling and was able to completely wipe out the Empire, just on the basis of him being a formidable soldier, would that, and he I thought he seemed to indicate that like that's something that like, yeah, like she didn't hire him to overthrow the Empire, but if he did do that, is would that be something that she wants? And I think it's like, yeah, clearly. So I do think there's going to be next season is going to be a big mystery about, has Demerzel found the way to maintain loyalty to the Empire? For example, there's other thing is like when Cleon said that the my line that carries my code is a grandson of Cleon's through the cloned younger brother, whatever, brother Don. Would that be considered part of his genetic material? Is Demerzel going to honestly have a divided loyalty next season? On top of her already divided, because like clearly what she wants is to be free. She just can't do that because of her programming.
It's an interesting thing. I just wanted to point out this super chat really quickly here, and if you guys do have something of that, that something that they introduced in season 2, I'll give you a chance to throw it out there. But Hiram Claytor again, thank you for the $2. He says he likes the difference between Dawn season 1 and Dawn season 2, and I would agree. And I just think that whole situation of being able to always have a different one, like there's going to, next time we see them, they're going to be different again. I think that's just such a good idea, especially when you have 3 good actors that can carry that. You know what I mean?
The other thing about that is, so we've seen, like the Dawn from season 1 was a genetic aberrant. He was colorblind, right? And he was the least Cleonic. The other 2 Cleons kind of looked at him like, what is the deal with this kid?
picking
I
up
thought
his
it was
glass with the
interesting.
wrong hand and stuff like that.
Well, I thought it was interesting this season that the other two clones treated Day like that, because Day was the one that had the chromosomal damage that had to be hastily repaired, and he's the one that's out of sync. And Day is a bully and a coward and a lot of other things. And I wonder if they're trying to say that there's some kind of Cleonic stuff about his genetic material that if you deviate too far, you don't have his, like Demerzel said, his nobility, his capacity, all that. Although none of these clones have seemed that super noble. But I do wonder if there is something about from the Cleon ideal that they stray, the worse of a human being they become. Because whatever you want to say about Cleon the One, he was a capital G great man, right? He did great, terrible, wonderful, but awesome things. He completely restructured the galaxy in his image.
Yeah, like I said, I think that the whole, like, it's a simple idea to make them that way, and just for TV and for something that's going to go on for multiple seasons, there's just so many ways you can tweak that that feels Asimovian to me, because it's just like, well, okay, this is something that you have. It's a genetic dynasty. It serves this purpose. It's very regulated, or everything happens the same way all the time. So how can we break this? Like, what are the different ways that you could break this from the character point of view, from Demerzel's point of view, from just the society, the actual act of governing and everything else. So there's just a ton of different ways that you can kind of mess around with that, and just, it won't get old. Not yet. And for me anyways.
Well, I want to jump back, like, in that regard to Demerzel real quick, because the way I've interpreted it is that she can think anything she wants. She can hate Cleon the First. She can think that Empire is terrible and needs to fall, but she's incapable of acting against Empire. And in fact, she's it's not just that she's incapable of acting against it. She's compelled to act in its benefit, right? The thing that strikes me as the most interesting part of that is, what do you define as Empire's benefit? What is best for Empire? Let's say you have two job offers on two sides of the country. You got LA and you got New York. All other things being equal, how do you choose? How do you know which path to go down is the right one? And that's, to me, that's where it gets even more interesting, that she has the Prime Radiant in her hands now. Yeah,
and to just really quickly, that idea, I mean, that's sort of what made the Zeroth law interesting, was because a human being is, like a person is very easy to define, like, I can't hurt this thing, right? Empire is a little bit more, it's a little more vague, right? There's a little more wiggle room on what that actually means, and good or bad. And I thought it was interesting that Harry brought that up. He planted that seed in that conversation with her whenever they were talking. And I also, it didn't even really catch me, because he says it so matter-of-factly the first time I watched it, but he says, "Your programming." He talks to her about knowing about her programming and that she's a robot, which that's not public information. You kind of forget that, I guess, when you're watching the series, because she's clearly a robot, and the people closest to her know that. Do you see any significance in the way that they presented that? Because that's right before he gives them the Radiant, which is what you were just talking about. And that is still a move that doesn't 100% make sense to me. I guess the obvious thing is that they can, you got to imagine that Dr. Seldon, he either split it, he has another copy so that he can look into hers, or, the vault already does that, or something like that. I mean, they're already connected in that way.
Or, I mean, he found out that there was a second foundation, right? And so this could be his way. And he found out, also deduced, that they were spying on him through the Prime Radiant. This could be his way of getting them off his back and going undercover. And while also at the same time providing the other Harry with an opportunity to spy on Empire with more information.
That's my thought, that the first Empire, or the first foundation, is becoming the second foundation is becoming the first, without the second foundation being aware of any of it.
So so he gives away the Radiant so that Harry Seldon, second foundation, Harry Seldon can't see him anymore.
Yeah.
Right. And can also see Demerzel, who he now knows is. How much does he know about Demerzel? I mean, that's a big question I have. Like, he's taken her apart molecule by molecule with the vault.
Yeah, the show is telling us that he knows a lot about her.
Yeah.
Which, you know, for me, I thought, well, that means that they met before, that there's a relationship there. That's the first thing that came to mind, is that Demerzel and Harry Seldon knew each other in a way that's not been revealed yet. But that's not the only explanation for it. But I mean, so that's one thing. Maybe he's trying to go dark. But the problem I would say with that is that I also thought that his plan was to kind of take over, you know, with his whisper ships and kind of start doing business with the galaxy. So those two things kind of both can't be true. I guess they could if he has people working for him as traders or whatever, but that would be why I wouldn't think that was the case. I would think it would be the other way, that he's trying to spy on her for one reason or the other.
Yeah, I'm trying to figure out the mechanism for that.
Yeah,
he doesn't have the other prime radiant.
Because just the other question is, why sacrifice Terminus? There wasn't much going on there. I mean, his the way he described it was, we must sacrifice Terminus so that the foundation can go on. So
that Empire thinks they killed the foundation.
Yeah. So there, you know, it makes a difference, I guess, what the answers to those questions are, because we don't really know if he's trying to go all, you know, becoming a ship dealer and kind of taking over, like, economically, getting power that way, you know what I mean? Or if he's trying to go completely secret. And
yeah, I'm curious, because wasn't he giving away the bracelets?
That's what Polly said.
Yeah. So, I wonder if that is the play, the economics of it.
Do you think that the spacers are going to come back and be an important part of the story in a different way now?
I think my thought on this is the majority of the spacers are probably going to fuck off and leave the galaxy, but almost nothing is a monoculture. Like, even if 99% of human beings love ice cream, there's a 1% that thinks it's gross, right? Mm-hmm. So I hope that there's a spacer or two just in the background, maybe a main character. And I think it'd be interesting to, like, there's some spacers that chose to stay, you know, for whatever reason. I think that would be a cool idea, but I don't think they're going to be important to the plot, unless, I don't know, I could see, like, later seasons them being a surprise ally, kind of coming in like the Eagles in Lord of the Rings, because they're out there. They're kind of have reason to be loyal to Harry and the Foundation and their goals. They don't have any loyalty to the Empire. So, like, you know, like by season 5, after we've forgotten about them, like the home swarm returning to whip some ass, I think that'd be kind of cool. But I don't think it's necessary.
That's kind of what I was thinking, was that you have them, they're a tool in the box. You can put them to the side now, and, you know, when you need something, you need it, you know, someone to come in that you already know, but hasn't been around for a while or whatever. They'll have a little bit of kick, like, oh yeah, that's the spacers. You know, remember them?
Mm-hmm.
What do you think, Jim? You have anything on spacer culture taking over?
I think I largely agree with you guys. I don't know that I need it, but I think it could be really cool if they do come back.
Do you have any, like, do you have some there?
I was gonna say, I tell you what, I wish they had that pool of actors to draw on when they were casting The Expanse, because holy hell, the spacers minus the glowing LED lighting would be just complete, just book accurate belters. I looked at those women are tall. Like she who Din's Light is like 5'11", and I think she who Center's like 6'1". Like, they got legitimately tall, thin people, and they never could get more than one European basketball looking dude the stand around in the background for Expanse. And I think as the season went on, they got less and less beltery in terms of casting.
Yeah, I think they tried in the beginning, and then they realized like this is not something we can sustain for
not that many
like,
7 foot tall people that can act, you know.
I mean, we got these they knew where the story was going. They knew they had a lot of time on big space stations, and they were like, do we really have local talent that we can get for extras that are all over 7 foot tall? Probably not. We talked about, so we kind of been talking around. One of the things that I thought was a very significant thing that Gaal said towards the end here was, if there's another crisis where you have to go up against another Harry Seldon, I mean, she pretty much laid the groundwork there for that, right? I mean, that was always a possibility, but like, why throw that into the closing moments of the season and such an important part of the thing if that's not something that's absolutely coming down the road?
Yeah, no, it's a completely rad idea. That is a no notes suggestion. I want to see Jerry Harry square off against himself and a duel between Dr. Seldon and Harry. I think that's because
there's a couple ways it can go too, right? Because you have the obvious thing that that's right there, that what he told him in the very beginning, why they needed the second foundation, was because Empire, the foundation with nobody to guide them becomes Empire again. And we saw that already a little bit this season. Like, they're already put a little bit of that in there. Like, he started putting his hand on the scale right away. Like, he knows that he shouldn't do that. He knows he shouldn't write Hober's name on the thing, but I feel like he's just a little bit pissed that he's the left hand. So he said, you know what,
100%.
They get to put their thumb on the scale. Why do I got thumbs? What about my thumbs? You know what I mean? So I think there's some real potential for some great stuff to come, because I mean, obviously Jared Harris is a great actor. I feel like the one that's in the body right now, he's kind of always tied up. But whenever we go and we see Dr. Seldon just sort of hanging out in the vault, I think those are the best moments we get from him so far. Because the real Harry Seldon seemed like he probably was a pretty serious. I mean, he was definitely kind of insufferable whenever you go back and read the prequels. Not the most likable guy. I could hang out with Vault Harry though, Dr. Seldon. Like, he seems like he's a lot of fun. I don't know.
I thought Ignis Harry is more like. Yeah, Dr. Seldon feels a lot more formal and a little bit more leaning into his public figure, whereas, Harry's still human. Like, one of my favorite parts is him just beating to death, beating tell him to death, and like, he's just sweaty and blood covered, and he's panting, he just looks at the camera and he's like, I never liked her. Like, I mean, how can you hate that guy?
That was a pretty good one. I'm not saying I hate him. I'm just saying that, like, he's got this burden, that guy, the body guy, he carries this burden around.
It's the old, I could have a beer with Dr. Seldon. Harry is just,
Yeah, I think that's probably the way to say it. I don't think that would be coming in the next season though, because it's pretty obvious that the next season is the mule season, right?
Yeah, and then I think even in Goyer's mind, I don't think he has nearly as much plotted concretely. It seems to me that from what I've gathered from his public statements, he's getting a lot of interviews this year. Mm-hmm. That like he was the mule plot line was his like Red Wedding. That's the thing that Double D's always said. Like, oh my God, as soon as we read that, it's like, can you imagine adapting that? Like, he is really excited to adapt the mule, and then it's like, boy, if I get it's all gravy, it's all bonus from there. Mm-hmm. But I think he has up to there pretty tightly plotted, and then he's got some ideas. And one of them, Harry v. Harry would be pretty interesting.
Yeah, I don't know where that would fit. I mean, obviously, there was the foundations in the books. There's there's stuff that happens in between them. So there just was no
True.
Harrys, you know, there was no Harrys that were involved. So, it all kind of, that might be like, that could be season 4, but I don't know where you go. A lot of that stuff, it depends, you know, like it's sort of how he says he has the off ramp at 4, 6, and 8.
Right.
He sort of has to know how far he's going before any of that stuff really fills out, you know. Did you guys listen to the official podcast this week?
I didn't make it all the
I
way
haven't had
through.
time yet.
Yeah, me neither. I did hear him say that, because I saw someone was saying in the comments earlier, and you know, obviously a big question I have is who is Callie and what's going on there. I don't think we got any new information in the finale at all in relation to that. But the other thing was that, well, the host of the what's his name, Concepcion,
Concepcion,
he told him, he asked him what's going on with Callie, and then Goyer said that he didn't answer that, obviously, but he said there is another faction that's sort of been there the whole time, which is a weird, like, another faction. It didn't take my mind anywhere right away, but a friend, I was talking to a friend, and they brought up the idea of the Galactic Council. And the reason being, I guess, that there's this photo on his behind the scenes thing from that shot that I was talking about, where she's looking at the holo display, and she's sort of posed with all the actors there. And I was looking in, and I feel like they did definitely inject those characters into this. I know I mentioned it in my recap for the video, or for the one where he announces, you know, he unveils Winniset's statue, and he announces that he's going to marry Sareth. They make a comment there. They say, "Oh, he called in the Galactic Council," and they show them off to the side. And then you go back through and you look at anytime that there's a lot of people around the Cleons this season, all of a sudden these characters have appeared, which is something they mentioned in the season 1 finale last year, that they sort of have to answer to the Galactic Council. So I guess this would all just sort of tie into, you know, the idea that Empire is tanking, and there's people that are powerful people, not just, you know, the average people that are going to get crushed and, you know, starved to death and all the other bad stuff that's going to happen. But like, there's people that with interest that will that could have a influence on the Empire going forward.
How much influence do you think they have overall? Because I'm very much under the impression that Day has the final word on everything. Although after, you know, season 2, it seems like Demerzel does. But what level, I guess, of power are the Galactic Council at?
I don't think it's been defined at all in the show. I mean, they said that, you know, basically that they came up in the finale of season 1 because they were arguing over letting Dawn continue, even though he was not a perfect match. And they made it sound like that they have to get some approval from them. Maybe not like maybe it's just sort of like they have to keep them happy, you know, so that they don't withhold things or something like that, you know what I mean, or make things difficult. But because I was thinking when he said faction, like I couldn't really think of what another faction could be. Then I was like, oh, I got excited, like maybe Calais is like, you know, there's some like real faction, you know, something that would make sense for why the Starbridge attack happened, why the genetic material got contaminated and all that other stuff. But then I thought it, you know, from looking at this other evidence, I think maybe it's just going to be the Galactic Council is going to play a part to be annoying to them going forward. Aaron is not. Can you hear him?
Yeah. What do you think about Calais representing the robot faction?
Well, I like that idea.
She's a wild robot.
Yeah, I mean, I do think she's a robot. I think that there's definitely going to be more robots. Like I know he says that she's the last of her kind. He always follows it up with as far as we know. So I feel like there's 100% going to be more robots in this
Well, especially
universe.
since Harry, part of the pitch to Demerzel was like, this is for your, like, you know, for all of us. And I think when he was saying that, he's not saying all of us humans, he's saying both human and robot kind. This is good. You know, this psychohistory is good for all of us. And that maybe implies, and we also know that wasn't Callie, they mentioned her, like that she wrote those books like 3,000 years ago. I thought that was another kind of ancient.
Yeah, the mathematician is. Yeah, the mathematician is. She predates everything. You know what I mean? Like everything that the dynasty and everything else.
So I do wonder if
maybe.
Yeah, I wonder if that's another indication, because you know the obviously she's a third thing. She's not a human. She's not a holograph. She's got a physical structure, but she doesn't show up on life signs. Like, you know, there's only so many interesting possibilities there. And her being a robot, I think is one of them.
Yeah, because I mean, she came from, she met Harry Seldon inside the Prime Radiant, and she gave him a clone body. You know, it's not; these aren't like minor things. You know, like that. They indicate that this person has some influence on, you know, something. I don't know what exactly, but.
And I really like that in context of the very tail end of what we see before we jump 152 years in the future with Demerzel. She looks at that Prime Radiant and she says, I see wonderful things in our future.
Yeah. What do you think that is?
Like what is the wonderful thing she's talking about? Is that for Empire or is that for herself?
Those two things are not the same. You know what I mean?
Not.
If it's good for Empire, it's bad for her in a lot of ways.
Yep. And I think that's what I was kind of. Does she see a glimmer of a possibility of a way to get out of this? And again, keep in mind that to her, a few hundred years is not that big a deal. You know, that's like a week or two for us. So like she's thinking in terms of long. She could hatch a plan that takes 1,000 years to come to fruition. But if it's at the end of it, she's a free entity again, then that's not a big deal. That's like us, you know, spending a couple of years on a project.
Or she sees the result, right? She sees the what this equation equals, but she can't understand the equation. So she knows that in the future there's something great for robots and something great for her, but she doesn't know how to get there yet.
Yeah, it's definitely spoiler territory, so I can't go into it. This is something that's it's not really troubling necessarily, but it's really confounding because of the book character that Demerzel's based off of. You know, I keep finding myself going in circles, and like it probably doesn't matter. You know what I mean? Like as far as any of the stuff that's happened right now, like I guess that's sort of where I land on it, is like whatever we're seeing right now is, as far as this Prime Radiant and this character Calais, like that all feels like show stuff. It might line up, you know, with something bigger that comes from the books, but like I don't think there's anything. I think that these are all original ideas that they're working towards, rather than, you know, something that they're pulling from. You know what I mean? Which is exciting because it you know, I think we all have expressed, you know, enough times already how Demerzel, you know, like this whole part of the story is carrying things in a direction, and there's a lot, like I don't really dislike any of the options that are on the table right now, I guess is what I'm saying. Like, you know, whenever I think about her being with you know, when she's talking to Dusk and Rue, you know, some of the best stuff in the finale for my taste, like it doesn't matter to me whether that's there to make us realize that she's human or or not. You know what I mean? Like it's just good on its own. You know what I mean? Like it's just good enough fundamentally. And then there's so many different ways you can go with it that it's just fascinating to just kind of think. But like, I do wonder about that statement that you just said, you guys were just talking about how he said for all of us. Because really, robots that are built under the laws, you know what I mean? Which would be all robots for the most part. I mean, they're not, they are built to serve, like that's their first, that's their first thing. So when you think about evolution, like if you think about them wanting personhood, that is a step up in a way, but like Demerzel feels like a different kind of, she's not a normal robot either. Does that make sense?
Well, she has different laws for one.
Yeah,
for sure.
That's true. Although something that Goyer implied in our conversation is that the other laws of robotics are not supplanted. They are just like there's a hierarchy, and Cleon just kludged a hack of his stuff right on top of it. So
yeah, that's the way I interpret it.
Yeah, which is why he also mentioned that there's that interplays with how she deals with the Cleons. Like she is really loath to kill exponent and decant them. It's like the last thing she wants. It's something she will do to protect the overall empire, but it's not something she does lightly or easily or something just like expediently. It's like she goes through great lengths to nudge them as little as possible. That's his opinion anyway.
Yeah, and that's sort of where I was going with what I was saying before I started thinking about the books. Like with her and with the whole thing overall, the idea of sentience, it doesn't seem like maybe when you think about a show like Westworld or something, like there's a really interesting question there. Like that doesn't really seem like the question here. But we have the idea of the way that she has her laws have been co-opted, right? So if we have conflict, like conflict is what the laws and all the stories about the laws that I really like, that's the best part about it, is the conflicts that are caused inside. You know what I mean? The way that we see that, yes, of course she doesn't want to kill her children, but sometimes she has to, right? So there's a lot of things that fall into those same categories. And so like, as long as they keep coming up with decent conflicts that make sense based on what they show us as far as like how these things are working, like I'm probably going to enjoy it. You know what I mean? Like it's probably going to work for me.
Are you also trying to get at like the idea that she's something more than just a by the rules robot, that she has evolved out of that somehow?
Well, I don't know if that's what they're telling us. Like that's not the story I was expecting to see. You know what I mean?
There's some hint of it though.
But there is in this,
like
in the
her
show,
questioning, where do my feelings for Cleon come from? Are they genuine? Do they come from my programming? I think there's something there that she's latching onto that is kind of the essence of that.
And like, I talked to him about the tears, because they obviously made the point of she was fake tears for Aberonis because she believed that he liked to see pain, right? And then she's obviously crying whenever she's talking to Dusk and Rue, where there's no benefit, you know what I mean? Like she doesn't, like there's no reason to trick them, Like if killing them was easy, she would just kill them. She would just walk in there and kill them because they're going to be dead anyways. What's the point of trying to explain yourself? I mean, it's dramatic for TV and we're happy that she's doing it, but like it's also saying something else, right? It's also saying that her struggle is not just
There's a lot of people in chat boldly asserting that the laws of robotics don't apply to Demerzel. Like saying that she kills without compunction and stuff. It's this Tyler Cunningham. I think you're wrong, dude. I think Demerzel still has those laws intact. I think that it definitely troubles her when she has to kill humans. I think that's something that's been consistently shown in the series, and I think it's something that David Goyer believes. So it's a tough spot. All the Demerzel law don't apply to her believers. I think you're going to be on an island, and there's a lot more to that story to be told.
Yeah, I think like you said, it's a hierarchy, and the way that Goyer sees it is a hierarchy. You can just throw one in on top of the others, and it cancels them out to a certain extent, but not completely. You know what I mean? Like the way that they talk about as far as her killing, the way they talked about it was that she used to follow 3 laws that prevented her from harming humans. And then something changed around the time of the robot wars. We don't know what that is. We don't know if there's another one that was put on top. I mean, that's
also being narrated by a guy who doesn't know, right?
Right.
You know,
right.
He has no. It's a third-hand account from 5,000 years in the future. So like, there is lots more to the story.
And when you think about the robot wars too, like what Dusk is saying, that sounds like propaganda. You know what I mean? And you know, we know that she messes with his memories and what he thinks. So she could certainly put stuff in his brain about the robot wars. But then also, you know, if Empire has, you know, did something awful and slaughtered a bunch of robots just because, then they would have their official story that made them look a lot better about it too. You know what I mean? So I don't think we really understand any of that stuff. But I do think that I agree with what you're saying, that they have showed us that it's not easy for her to, she's not a senseless killing machine. Like she's not a weapon necessarily. Like there's a price that's involved with her doing those things.
Yeah. I mean, when she has to do too much of it, it makes her rip her face off and scream. That seems like someone who kills with compunction to me, but I could be wrong.
So I don't know. I just want to keep talking about Demerzel, but I think there's other stuff too.
Oh, I almost forgot. Can we talk about go back to the fake outs? The thing that Goyer told me that kind of floored us.
Oh yeah.
The biggest problem that Jim had with this thing is that he was one from the very beginning really paying attention to the Barbara Walters camera effect that was going on in the psychics, the what Goyer calls the stacked lens. And he said, you know, you noted a couple of things. Yeah, the defocus lens. I thought it's called a stacked lens. Stacked lens effect. Anyway, you know, we went back and forth, and Goyer said there was a consistent list of rules on when those effects were supposed to be used and when they weren't. And in episodes 4 and 7, in certain scenes, they were not applied when they're supposed to be applied. And conversely, they were applied when they were not supposed to be applied. And so that on screen, the reveal that they meant that, you know, so you could kind of piece this together, it's just fucked up.
I'll be honest. Like I tried to look at it, and I thought it was just too incoherent. Like I thought they were using it more stylish, like in a stylish way, like to kind of say, like hint at it. But I didn't. Whenever I was breaking down that first episode, whenever we were doing, I spent some time, and I was like, it's not. This isn't like, you know, like whenever a show does that really well, like, you know, they'll fool with the aspect ratio or they'll add some certain thing. It's not easy to do. You know, it sounds like it's a really easy thing to do. It's actually quite difficult, I think, when you start talking about multiple shots and different editors and everything else that's going on. And I looked at this one and I was like, okay, I can't really base anything on this for sure. So
I think that was if they had not screwed that up, I think literally every other reveal you could trace back and say, there was this tell that led, but like it got lost in the translation somehow. And I guess it's like I wondered, like, why couldn't you apply that digitally? Because it's a crucial thing, right?
Yeah, it looks like it would be easy to do that part,
but maybe removing it. Like I figured removing it would be a lot harder if you're like in editing, like, oh shit, this stuff isn't right. But it's
to me they were establishing a visual language for when powers were being used, and then
That's the idea.
And then they told us at the very end that powers were being used the entire time. So why didn't we see that the entire time? And
Well, that would make
I kind of
sense.
expected him to explain those rules a little bit more in detail, but I guess he just, I don't know, he surprised me by saying that sometimes, they weren't applied where they should have been, or vice versa.
Yeah, I like as far as that was concerned. I mean, I did notice it was very noticeable that Gaal was hiding something from Salvor. You know, like that was just everything else in that. All their interactions in that one episode, like it wouldn't have made sense. Like they were definitely trying to show us that something was happening. That's why I thought that one worked pretty good. You know what I mean? As far as like being able to backtrack, you know what I mean? And that might just be because, like I said, I just didn't invest that much time in it because I know that those lens effects, because I know that that's something that when it works, it's great. You know what I mean? Like everybody can pick up on it. You could say, oh no, look at it's right there. You can see how that is, but it seems like it gets screwed up a lot more than shows actually just nail it. You know what I mean? Because it can't be too obvious. If it's really obvious, then what's the point? You know what I mean? So yeah, I don't know. Like I try not to, I mean, I want to be able to put some stock in that, you know what I mean? But like whenever I looked at it, I didn't think that it was gonna work out for me on this one.
Can we talk about another thing that
you could talk about anything you want
in season 3?
Yes.
How soon do you think they're gonna deal with the baby of Sareth and Dawn? Is this going to be something that immediately is a going concern, or are they holding this in their back pocket for the opportune time later?
I was thinking that it was a way to kind of cynically, I guess. I was thinking it was a way that after Empire has collapsed, that they can bring Lee Pace back into the show.
Okay.
I thought so too, because I was thinking like Lee Pace with like a little bit of, you know, a prosthetic nose, and maybe instead of blue eye, they get them the brown. Does Lee Pace has naturally brown eyes and they make him blue, right? But like if that would be, you know, just give him a little kind of like what they did with the Ewan McGregor in Fargo, where his less successful brother just had like, you know, he played two twins, and one of them had just kind of like a prosthetic nose, and they could do that and they would still be Lee Pace and not be. I don't think Lee Pace is going to wear like full prosthetic makeup for like multiple seasons. It seems like a lot, but I could see that.
I mean, he could just put on like 40 pounds or something.
That's true. That's true. He could do he could do Christian Bale.
What was it? For All Mankind season 2,
Gordo.
Yeah.
Oh, Gordo. Gordo
that was all practical.
Have you seen One Piece, Pete? Any of the One Piece of Netflix?
I watched a bit of it with my wife. Yeah, we watched just the first couple episodes.
Do you know the first pirate they're executing at the beginning? That's Gordo.
Is it really?
Yeah.
Huh. Yeah, there was something familiar, but I didn't make that connection. That guy's great. He was Patriot too, right?
Yeah. I've seen him in a lot more than I think he's going to be like a really good character actor, because like he just disappears in those roles.
Yeah.
Like I've looked him up and I'm like, oh my God, I can't believe he's in as much stuff as he's been in.
Yeah, because like I mean he definitely did that for season 2 of For All Mankind. Like that was 100% like I'm going to become a different person, and then I'm going to change back into myself by the end of the season, which is pretty impressive. What else are you looking forward to in season 3?
The return of Tellum.
Oh man, Tellum returns, we riot is like the opposite Daryl Dixon corollary from The Walking Dead.
Yeah.
I'm actually really looking forward to seeing how they do the switcheroo and to what extent between the first foundation and second foundation. This kind of struggle for supremacy between the Harrys is, I think, really super interesting. And I'm also interested to see what kind of role Brother Constant plays. Like, I guess she'll be dead by the time we get to it, unless there's
but she's got She's
They're
got a
all in the
baby.
vault. They're also
There's a
all in the
baby
vault.
coming down there.
Time doesn't work the same in the vault.
True.
One of the babies is going to be a descendant of the mule. I almost joked when you said where are they going with the Sereth and Dawn. I'm like, well, their first son's going to be called Horse. He's going to give birth to a son called Donkey, and then sure enough, a mule. I think that's about enough generations to get it done. But
Jim,
but one of those two descendants is going to be the antagonist. It has to. I mean, I guess you could also say that's too cute, but I think narratively it makes sense.
Yeah, I mean, there was a time because Hober Mallow does have a descendant in the books, and there was a time when I thought, well, that would be what that's going to be, but at this point, I don't know. You know what I mean? Like, it seems like the way that he uses stuff from the he subverts a lot of the things that he pulls from the books. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah.
So I wouldn't put him past him to have that come down that line. He did say that he would that they knew who the mule was. They knew in this season who it was, meaning that it's connected to something that happened in season 2. I just thought the mule was going to come out of nowhere. Honestly, I mean, I thought for a little while it might be Josiah, just because he was such a creepy little kid, and that why make him so creepy if he's not going to be something? But now we know that what he was, like why they did that, and he's pretty dead. So, yeah, I guess the mule.
One thing about Theorycraft and a mule that I ran by David himself is because I've been on this like, oh, Blue Eyes, Thespin, this is going to be, it's either going to be the lost baby of Hugo and Salvor, it's going to be. But I asked him that directly. He goes, no, the mule's eyes are not intended to be Thespin. They're intended to be some other thing.
Yeah.
So like that to me, that he said that makes it very unlikely that it's going to come from the brother Constant lineage. But maybe
you think that's a direct misdirect right there?
I don't think he would. Well, I guess that's right. He didn't say that. No, he just said that they're not Thespin eyes. So
yeah,
because I asked him, are they mechanical eyes? Are they? But he mentioned that like they kind of shine. They seem to. He says they seem to grow brighter when he's using a psychic.
They do that.
But you're right. He didn't actually directly answer my question. He just made a bunch of observations about his own show, which he does very well. So.
What do you think about? Is there going to be a new terminus? Got to be, right?
Got to set up shop somewhere.
Yeah,
they've got 6 other planets.
Why can't they live in the vault, especially if they're going to be the play a second Foundation role?
I guess they could.
I mean, it doesn't look very nice inside there. Like as far as.
Seldon's office is nice. You can make it nice. It's a lot. This is a lot.
Yeah, but I mean, you got no windows. You got no. I feel like it would get a little depressing in there.
Yeah.
I mean, you can make whatever you want. You can just make whatever you want out of air. I guess molecules are molecules. Is that what they said?
That's what I was thinking.
I guess you could just.
Let me ask you this, Pete, because I saw some differences in chat. I've seen some differences on our Discord and on Reddit. Do you think that the people in the vault are real, quote unquote real? Or do you think that they have all been digitized and they are no longer corporeal bodies?
I just assumed they were real. I mean, that didn't even cross my mind that they would not be.
Yeah, we've seen people walk out, right? I mean, Polly's walked out.
Well, and also,
yeah, you're talking specifically at the end of the finale that the people in.
And Goyer mentioned, and he's right, because I went back and checked. If you look at Polly when he's like kneeling before the vault, praying to Harry, and the shockwave is coming towards him, he said there's about 3 or 4 frames where you can see like a faint glimmer of light start to envelop him. And to me, that's like, it's not that Harry has like uploaded their consciousness and I think that he's bodily taken them into,
that's what I thought.
And now, like, you know, you got, you know, like, is he, you know, you got the Star Trek, I guess, teleportation, you know, are people the same when they're teleported? But like, I think that they're as real as Hober walking out, you know, like they can walk out of that vault just like Hober did, just like the administrator did, just like Day and Demerzel did. No problem.
You mentioned that the time is different, and that's so annoying to me. Like I guess there's a point, there's a reason why that they introduced that Hober was walking around in there for 2 days, but it felt like 2 minutes on the outside. But like, it's sort of like, it's a nitpick I have with this series in general. Like, you know, there's a lot of things like that dealing with the sci-fi stuff, you know what I mean? Like where you're like, yeah, that's a cool idea. That's something that I've heard of. You know, I can kind of do it. And then there'll be that thing like, yeah, time is different in here, which is just so vague and just so like, I don't know. It's so exploited. You could exploit that in so many different ways that just feel annoying to me. You know what I mean? Like,
it's probably true because time is a construct of physical space. Like,
I know, but I'm just saying, like, if that's the case, then I want to know what it is. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
like, I want to know what
Gotcha.
I want to know what my expectation should be connected to that. You know,
I will point
like,
out that if any, it doesn't.
How
seem like
is time
runs,
weird?
It doesn't seem like time runs slower. It seems like it runs faster, right? Because Hober was in the vault for seconds, but he thought he was in there for days.
Yeah, and it wasn't the same. Like whenever he came out later, it wasn't exactly the same, you know, because they tried to play the trick on him. Remember, she said 3 days, and he was like 3 hours or whatever.
And then there's Salvor, right? Who seemingly, you know, from one perspective, you could say, oh, this happened 2 weeks earlier or whatever. Or you could say she went back in time via the vault and told Harry before all these events. So
yeah,
honestly, that reminds me of something else that pissed me off this season. I did not like them doing 2 timelines without any evidence. And we found out like when Harry wrote Hober Mallow on the outside of the vault that's another thing that I didn't. There's little because I don't think there was any tell at all for that.
No,
you know,
I mean it wasn't really important to anything that was happening until they showed it. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I don't mind it for that reason.
Yeah,
wait, what? Why don't you mind it, Jim? I don't understand.
Because it didn't. None of the plot like it didn't feel like it was super important that Salvor tell him at a specific time and.
There's quite a bit of theory crafting that was going, you know, based on, you know, like why is a lot of people were assumes like why is Hober Mallow important? Like if individuals aren't important, why would it be important that, you know, like why does singular independent? So it's like it retrospectively made sense, but like again, there was and I didn't want them to come out and tell us it's 2 timelines, but like I think even shows like Westworld, which is infamous for its mendacity and how it treats its fans, always in retrospect had a tell. You know, it was an aspect ratio, it was a tone of color, it was an outfit someone's wearing, it was, and I don't, and maybe there was for Foundation, but that's one thing I'd forgotten about that they did a rug pull earlier in the season that annoyed me.
Yeah, I mean, some of that stuff to me, I you know, like I'm probably a little bit more obsessive than the average fan, so you know, I can let it go, but yeah, sometimes like whenever if you're gonna put some kind of like really cool sounding concept in there, just give us enough like how it works so that it doesn't feel, I don't know, just so the world feels real. You know what I mean? So it doesn't feel like a magical place where random stuff can happen all the time. Like part of the reason I like sci-fi is because, you know, you can be in a different time, like where things are different, but like you want it to feel lived in too. You want it to feel like established and like this is the way that this works, and you know what I mean, like just some kind of consistency.
If the rules aren't consistent, you can't invest because you know you could at any time the Deus Ex Machina can happen. And I don't mind a couple gods from the machine because that's literally what Harry is, but like they need to be cautious going forward to do that. Like, you know, we've talked about.
Yeah. So I mean, we're getting a little bit long on time. I know it's your weekend evening right now, so
I got nothing to do though, but prepare for a day of debauchery at Oktoberfest tomorrow. So
yeah, I'm not particularly in a hurry, but you know, like I didn't want to just bounce from anything to, bounce aimlessly whenever you guys are giving up your time to hang out. I wonder, I mean, for all intents and purposes, season 3 is going to happen, right? Like there's not really unless like the strikes really go something really strange changes as a fact of like how long they go on or something like that. I mean, everything seems just
like I think lesser companies might like have to cancel things under financial pressures, but this is not Apple. Apple, didn't they just say it's like $1.3 trillion on their balance sheet? I mean, they could greenlight 100 foundations a year and not run out. So like I do think that they are, and I think Apple has started to build a really strong identity as having the home for good science fiction. There's so many great. They got For All Mankind. They got Foundation. They got Severance. They got Invasion. There's like that seems like that's a genre they're leaning into, arguably more than sci-fi did back in the day, even. So like, I think they'd be loath to give up this, David Goyer's high-profile creator, a show that they seem to be pleased with the success. It is getting like, I mean, just anecdotally from podcast traffic and from subreddit traffic and stuff, it seems like this show gained popularity in the off season. So, boy, I think Apple will be the last one of the last company I'd suspect to pull the plug on this. So I agree with you, and Goyer seems confident.
Yeah, he says it's all but assured at this point, but they haven't confirmed it officially.
Yeah, because they have had meetings about the popularity and about their internal metrics, and I guess those that went really, really well. So
yeah, I was wondering, what, like, because like obviously we've said this earlier that we were a little down on the finale, and I was wondering about the way that people would respond. To me, it seems like the response that they got, at least in the first 24 hours or so, would be like, hell yeah, just as soon as we can, let's get this thing going and get season 3 out. You know what I mean? Because I can't only imagine that this is like for the response, because I mean the response to season 1 was mixed. You know what I mean? At best. And I feel like this one has been just getting better and better as far as the way people talk about it, season 2. And then now that there's a general consensus that people are fairly happy with the way it ended, I feel like a lot of people are going to go and watch it now. You know what I mean? Because they're going to hear season 2's done. You can binge it and it's better, and go check it out or whatever.
It will be interesting, because that's one thing I have been puzzled and slightly concerned by, is the fact that if you look at like professional critical outlets, you'd think that the Foundation doesn't exist. Like almost no one in traditional or alternate media in terms of like big establishment places is really covering this on a week-to-week basis, or even in passing. So it's like I do hope, I think it would be beneficial if this show gathered more buzz,
I think a lot of that, I mean, not to go off track, but I think that a lot of that's data driven, like a lot of the big outlets, they obviously have relationships with the media companies and things like that, but they also, it makes sense for them to wait until it's doing numbers before they really put any time into it. Like I've seen I only know one person that's writing recaps. Shanti Collins was doing recaps for Decider that were good.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, I think there's probably more, but I didn't really go looking for them, because by the time I get my video out, I already, you know what I mean? Like there's not, like you said, there's just not a lot of like buzz outside. So I just sort of have my own little, my little Foundation pod where I talk to a few different people, and that's about it.
I mean, it's been good. I think it's been good for us. I think us collectively, because we're like the big fish in a small pond. There's not a lot of people talking about it. So we're, the few podcasts and video people are getting the lion's share of people's search traffic. So eventually, I guess if that continues, people will, if I know anything, people know where the money and the eyeballs are at. So if the show continues to grow an audience. And I was encouraged because I woke up this morning having no idea. I was really worried. I was really worried there'd be a lot of angry, but it seems like I would say 80-20 split on like loving it.
That's what I would say
versus mild disappointment. But I haven't seen anybody like this is the last fucking straw. And and it helps that 9 was just an absolute banger.
So good.
I'm pretty sure they're going to get season 3, almost certainly. I don't think they'll probably announce it till after the strike is resolved.
I don't know if they really can.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
I just don't think I don't think the companies want to kind of rock the boat right now. They've got a mission that they're on both sides of that strike, and nobody wants to give anything away, right?
Yeah, they need this. They need to pay those people, and they need to get that wrapped up.
Yeah,
they're gonna do it eventually.
Man, Q1 and Q2 next year is going to be some bleak shit. Like I know we have like True Detective in January. If that doesn't get pushed again, but boy, it gets really slim in terms of big releases after you get that. Maybe The Boys, that got shot, right? That's in the can. But like,
I think that's on the shelf. So they probably did push that back for that reason, huh?
Yeah, just setting it aside. Yeah,
because they have the other one, the Gen V, to kind of quell the people waiting. You know, they can hear, look at this, look at these keys, look at this thing here. Yeah, it's gonna be tough. I don't like to think about it.
Yeah, it's a little scary. It's a little scary. That's their job. We're like the remoras just swim along with these giant fish, and now the fish are gone. How are we going to feed ourselves, guys?
Yeah, I mean, I 100% support people working and getting paid for it. I'm not complaining about the strike in any at all. Like I'm 100% behind the idea that should happen, and I hope that it continues to happen whenever they need it to make things right. But as far as my own job, like I'm a little bit concerned about
can you imagine
next year?
Can you imagine the strike going on into like Christmas, like the Dickinsonian imagery of the billionaire studios holding out these? Because like, most writers and actors are not the people getting paid millions of dollars. There are people that are punching the clock like you and me. And there's also 10 times that number of people below the line folks that are like grips and lighting and craft services and production assistants that like, there is just so many people out of work, and it's a bummer. It's a real,
and you're going up against storytellers, emotional manipulators. Like
I'm telling you, I would not.
They're going to get crushed
if I was the studios, I would want to get this wrapped up by early November, or they are going to be fucking Ebenezer Scrooge. Yeah, with every bit of talent and genius bent to portraying them that way. So, yikes.
Yeah. Let's bring it back on topic to Foundation, because this is definitely something that we could talk about for a long time, but I'm not sure it's as interesting to people watching as it is to us, because it's our job that we're talking about. Just want to thank Dubs13 here for $10. Been watching since Mr. Robot or GOT. Thanks for all your videos. Yeah, thanks, man. I was thinking the other day how good Mr. Robot was. There's really not any Mr. Robots out there right now.
Yeah, what is Sam Esmail up to? I know he had another thing in the works, but I don't recall hearing anything about it lately.
He did that. Wasn't that the Homecoming? Was that he did that?
Well, he did Homecoming. I thought he had something else.
Yeah. I was just trying to think of other things I've seen Sam Esmail do.
Yeah, I saw something and I can't remember. I think it was a movie though. He has something else with Julia Roberts coming out. But I thought which I got excited for because Homecoming was pretty good. But I think it turned out to not be. I think it turned out to be a feature, and not a.
I think you're right.
Not a series. One thing, I guess, one thing to think about here at the end of the season. I mean, you can't nobody could say that this series is not ambitious. They definitely take their shots. I think the pretty good record this season of those things paying off. Whenever you think about that, though, I mean, do you get to a point where you're like, do you worry that they might be writing checks that they can't cash? Like, do you feel like, because I don't think I do. I've been thinking about this the last couple of days. I feel like the way everything resolved here, I feel like that's a pretty good place to go forward from. Where, yes, I don't want to see too many fake outs. I don't want to see, let's make it a crazy twist. Let's try to be smarter than the audience and use deception when we need to kind of make stuff happen. But like beyond all that, I feel like it feels like it more like it feels like it came into its own rather than is getting ahead of itself.
Yeah, I totally agree. It's interesting because like Goyer as a storyteller is kind of all over the place. If you look at his body of work, for every Dark City, he's got a Batman v Superman Dawn of Justice with his name on it. And I don't think he cares, like he's a guy doing a job like any other. And, he tries to do what he tries to do. And he cares more or less about some projects than others. But I think this is a big passion project for him. I think this is kind of his baby. He's very excited about it. And you can see that, him and his writers are, they can do inspiring monologues. They can jerk tears. Their production design and the CGI artists are next level. They have all the tools that they need, and it, like as a big fan of the Foundation series myself, I think what they're doing to the material is honestly elevating it. Asimov would be the first one to tell you that he didn't think the Foundation books were super engaging and interesting, and if he would have had the time to rewrite them, he would have put a lot more action and better characters and dialogue. I mean, that's a direct quote from his impressions of sitting down and reading the trilogy 30 years after he read it, before he started his sequels and prequels. So I just am amazed at how they are staying true to the core themes and big ideas and questions of the book, but just having so many unique twists and turns that there's a couple times when he blew up the first Foundation, I was like half panicking, like, how are they going to ever put this on the rails again? And half like, you bastard, how are you going to put this on the rails back again? So I think it's a good place to be with the showrunner, that they're capable of anything in like the good sense, not into like their history's greatest monster capable of anything.
What do you think, Jim?
If you had asked me in season 1, did I think they could top what they put on screen as far as the visuals go, I would have said absolutely
visually,
not. They did such a marvelous job of creating a spectacle here. There's no chance they could top themselves in season 2. And then what do? They go and top themselves in season 2. So visually, yeah, I think they've got whatever team they have put together with the visual effects has just been creating things I've never imagined before. And then on the writing side, like I said before, I think season 2 is a big improvement over season 1. And I even like season 1 quite a bit. So I mean, they are playing with very powerful toys and dangerous toys in some of the psychic stuff they're doing and some of the timey-wimey things, and that can get out of control. But I don't know. I'm not really scared of it. I'm not thinking, oh, they're setting themselves up for failure in season 3. I'm more excited to see what they can pull off in season 3, because he talks about Goyer in our interviews always talks about how he wants to take these big swings, like you said, Aaron. And that's exciting to me. Sometimes those are going to connect, and sometimes those are going to whiff, right? So, and I don't want to watch mediocre television. I just like, what's the point?
There's too much good stuff.
Yeah. There's new amazing stuff like Foundation season 2 being created every day. So give me that audacious swing and see if it connects.
Yeah, I agree. I think that we can probably start to wrap things up here because I do have I have to finish editing that interview and I have to get that up later. So trying to think of a way to, if there's anything that I wanted to end on, and I'm not really coming up with anything. What, do you have anything else that you know, I mean, obviously we'll do your plugs and stuff like that, but do you have anything else foundation related that you want to throw in there before we wrap things up?
I'm excited for the big coffee table book to come out.
Yes.
The Goyer mentioned that they're working on Blu-rays. They're going to have special features. I hope they have commentaries on them. I think that's, but you know, in terms of like, what I'm grasping as like, this is probably going on the 10th hour that I've talked about Foundation season, the season 2 finale and or the season as a whole. So it's like I still have one more podcast to do with the listener feedback. So I think I'm about foundationed out, but I'm debating a series reread before next season because like I've got like old 30-year memories of the books and Jim's got like, you know, 3-year-old memories of the first book. When's the last time you read the Foundation series? Do you think in like your familiarity with the material enhances your coverage? Because they also stunt a lot. So
you asked me whenever I last read.
Yeah,
I read all 15 before season 1 came out. Like I reread all.
So it's
15.
very recent.
Yeah,
there's 15 books.
Yeah,
holy shit! I thought there was like 5 or 7. 15?
There's 7
Wow.
7 Foundation books, but the if you read Robots and Empire, I would say you don't really need to read Empire.
You reread Robots and Empire on top of it. That's they're bringing in some of that material. So
yeah, the Robots is worth it because there's a lot of tie-ins, especially with the books that come after the trilogy and the prequels. But I think Empire you could probably just skip it. I mean, they talk about Trantor a little bit, like the early days of it. And that's really about it. You know, I mean, they're not bad books or anything, but just as far as like how they might influence what's happening on the show, it's negligible. I just listened, like sort of side listened to Prelude to Foundation, and I'll probably go and do the other one, the other prequel too. It's fun, like to just kind of see, like, because I think the biggest thing about reading that one recently was that I realized that they pull from that a lot. You know what I mean? Like that you could tell that probably if they're rereading like he says they are, you know, before they do the writer's room or whatever, like they probably start there. And I think that influences like the look of Trantor and a lot of the, you know, just a lot of, because Demerzel's in that one and there is a Cleon that doesn't really do much, but you know what I mean? Like that stuff, it reminded me like, you know, where some of that stuff that they used to just, you know, to create their world came from, because it's not really in the original trilogy. You know what I mean? I would say go for it. I mean, I don't know. It depends on how much time you have too. And the thing that's nice about
a lot of time. I have a lot of time early 2024, Pete.
Yeah. The time with, I mean, the thing about this nice for those books for me is that I've read them multiple times. So, you know what I mean? Like it's like The Expanse, you know, I can throw on an Expanse audio book and I'm right there with wherever it's at. Like I don't have to, you know, go back and look at the Kindle or something to check what a character's name is or something like that. You know what I mean?
You think you can get away with listening to an audiobook on like a Twitch stream? Because like that would be a cool idea for content. I'll just like on the long off season, just listening to the Foundations while I'm painting miniatures, you know, and just have a kind of a Foundation book club.
That would be pretty cool. I don't think I don't know what the rules are for it.
Yeah, me either.
That, I mean, they have those watch along things. I don't know why they couldn't have audible.
That's the thing. There's
listen-alongs.
rules, and then there's what actually happens on the platform.
Right.
But
Yeah.
Gotta go to Kick for that.
can I put my Kindle underneath a webcam and just like read it online?
I mean, there used to be channels where people did that, like where people just read books.
Oh, I bet that would be relaxing as fuck. That's like a
Well, that's what they were for. That was the
ASMR.
whole idea behind it, was like someone with a really soothing voice would read to you. So I don't know how they really could do that with copyright, but you know what I mean? There might be ways to do it. I'm not sure. So I just wanted to really quickly say that this guy asked me voices in Espanol. What about Three Body Problem? Yeah, that's something I'm definitely looking forward to. That's coming out in January.
Me too. I'm curious.
I would like. I mean, I'm definitely going to make videos about it. It's a Netflix one, so that's sort of the people who watch Netflix and consume Netflix videos generally just want one at the end, and that's sort of the rinse and repeat of it. I'd like to do more though, because I really like that story, and I hope that it'll be, it'll be worth it. I think there's a lot of potential there. I would like to go back into the books too, if it really would take off, but I just don't know what to expect, because it's a binge, so people will be talking about it for a little while, and then it'll drift away for 2 years or so until the next one comes out.
That's the depressing thing about covering Netflix shows, is your best case scenario is Stranger Things, which is a runaway hit phenomenon that no one discusses outside of 3 or 4 weeks when the show gets released, and everything else is downhill from there when it comes to Netflix. It really is like keeping the shorts.
I mean, part of the reason why I like TV is because I like the community aspect of talking in between, and I like to binge a good show because it's entertaining. But I mean, it's not the same thing, you take out the whole reason why I like doing the YouTube channel is because week to week you can, talk about it with other people,
Right.
That just doesn't happen in a binge model because not everybody's doing it at the same time. All right. Well, I think we're definitely just sort of winding down. So let's make it official. What do you guys got going on? What do you want to plug before we go?
We are on baldmove.com. You can follow all of our socials at baldmove, except for TikTok. We're at baldestmove there if you prefer that. Right now we are covering Ahsoka. We are gearing up to, we're also covering Daryl Dead, the Walking Dead France. We are gearing up to do Fargo season 5 with the wonderful John Hamm. Excited about that. We'll be doing True Detective in January when it comes back for its 4th season with who is it? It's
Jodie Foster.
Jodie Foster, thank you. She's like a tie in the wind. Chi Chickapee, and then I don't know what we'll do after that. There's I'm curious about the 3 Body Problem too.
What about For All Mankind? They just announced that.
For All Man, because it didn't
perform well, huh?
It didn't perform very well at all, and we're already got 3.5 shows we'll be doing simultaneously. So it's but it just didn't. It's not that I don't think that people aren't watching it. I just think that maybe the demographic's a little older, and it just doesn't translate into podcast. We had the similar problems with Justified, where it's like reasonably popular show, but not in terms of podcasting popularity. But I guarantee we'll be talking about it on our Off the Clock premium podcast. So if you find us and like us enough to give us some money in the meantime, you can follow along with us on there, bare minimum. But maybe we'll get episodic coverage. We do typically get screeners for that, which helps out. But it's also over Christmas.
Yeah,
I hate shit. I hate when TV stretches over Christmas. It's always a bummer.
That's what they always did with The Expanse. Once it went to, that really got on my nerves.
Same, brother. Same. The Expanse really was a pain in the ass to cover a couple of years.
All right. Well, we did do an interview, or we did do a wrap up for your podcast together. That's coming out next week, right?
Yep.
Yeah,
Friday.
yeah.
So
Oh, a
if
lot of
you
people.
wanna-
Do you know of Quinn's ideas? Because like I do love. I'm a subscriber to Quinn. He's got some of the deepest dives on the 3-body problem I've ever seen. He'd be an awesome guy to collab with. It seems like.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I've talked to him before.
Oh, have you? Cool.
Just randomly through somebody else. I mean, obviously, I know what I know for sure is that he is, because I watched his videos back whenever he was just starting to do Dune stuff and coming out of Game of Thrones or whatever. I would. I mean, what I know is that he reads all the same stuff I do for sure. You know what I mean? Like most of the videos that I see, and obviously he's really popular. So I'm sure that I would get along, but we just don't. I don't know. Like YouTube's a weird thing. Like like what do you do? Like send somebody an email and say, hey, you want to collab sometime? You know what I mean? Like it's
probably you got to run the content creators gauntlet and see if you get a response if they see it.
I mean, I follow him on Twitter for I don't even know when I started following him or whatever, but I see him pop up there. He seems like I would definitely. I don't watch a lot of videos of anybody's videos, so like
Right.
I can't say that I watch his videos necessarily, but like I see what they are and I know that they look pretty cool, and I think that I would endorse what he's doing if not actually if I'm not actually consuming the content.
Yeah, that's our plan. That's our plans for action at baldmove.com, at baldmove everywhere. Baldest Move on TikTok.
Yeah, and I don't know, like I probably will do For All Mankind. It didn't really perform that great for me either, but the timing isn't too bad, and
if you do, regardless of whether we're doing it or not, pull me in, man, because I do love talking about For All Mankind.
Yeah, I got pretty excited when I saw that yesterday or the day before. I was like,
what'd you think of Old Man Ed from the trailer?
It's just what I mean. Like it's exactly what you would expect, but that's what that show's kind of good at. You know what I mean?
For some reason, Joel Kinnaman wearing dodgy 65-year-old makeup to me reads like an old David Harbour.
Yeah,
he really looks like an old David Harbour, and at the end of that.
All right. Thanks a lot for coming on, guys. Thanks to all the people watching for tuning in to the foundation. I got another David Goyer interview that'll be coming out like within the next 12 hours. I got a season 3 questions video that I'll be doing, and I really want to do a Demerzel, a big Demerzel video. So hopefully I'll get around to that before people stop paying attention to foundation. But that's it for us today. Thanks for hanging out, and I'll talk to you soon.
Yeah, thanks for having us on, Pete. Love it.
Yeah,
Appreciate you guys.
definitely.